So my name is Jen Stirrup and I work for myself. I call myself the Data Whisperer and I've set up my own consulting company called Data Relish. My affiliations, I'm a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional, a Regional Director, and I'm also a Microsoft Certified Trainer.
And what does Data Relish help its clients do?
We achieve success for our customers with their data. We help them to obtain real business value. We essentially make a real impact on organisations through their data. And I really think every organisation has got data, but they don't know where to start with it sometimes. And you'll know yourself, in the industry we have this last mile problem. I call it the last mile of analytics, where we seem to do lots of interesting work in analytics, but how do we take that to production? How do we finalise it? So I try and help organisations to really take that leap of faith, take that last mile, and jump straight in and have some real success with their data.
I'd love to unpack that quite a bit. The last mile of analytics, does that mean getting dashboards into everyone's hands or getting machine learning models into production? What are we really covering?
I think it really covers a whole wealth of things. I think some organisations are not quite ready for AI and ML. And the reason for that is sometimes they are just sitting in Excel spreadsheets and not really doing anything really great with their data. So first of all, I try and take them on a journey. And I don't know what you think, but I think journeys with data never end.
Mm-hmm.
You can always find new things. There's always new interesting things. And I think that some of that is actually part of the problem. How do you actually take it to production? How do you know when it's finished? So I do try and use a more agile methodology, and I try to get them to a successful place with business intelligence first. Let's get the data in a good place, clean, and like you say, dashboards. But what happens next? Now, the way I look at it is you get two different things. You get a time to question and a time to answer. Now, business intelligence is all about the time to answer. How long did it take me to get to receiving my report or my dashboard? And BI is very much like that. How quick can I get my reports built? How quickly can it run for me? That's when you get your answer. Analytics and AI, I think, focus more on time to question. So when you get your report, what questions does that provoke inside your mind to say, hey, hang on a minute, I've spotted something really interesting there. And that turns into a process, which turns into an action, which turns into a result. And that difference between time to answer and time to question is really important, I think. It tells me where an organisation is in terms of its maturity. So I've been building AI solutions for a long time. My background was in AI, and for the first 5 years of my career, I was an artificial intelligence consultant. And every customer was the same then, and they're still the same now. How do we know when we're ready? I personally think the secret is lots of testing, and really making sure that you spend as much time testing as you do developing a system. Once you've done that, we can start to be really confident we're in a good place and then push it to production at that point.
Makes sense. I like that time to question benchmark you have. I would guess an organization that's struggling in that area does not already have this KPI on their agenda and whatnot. How do you get an initial measurement like that with an organization that's at the stage of maturity where they need to be tracking those sorts of things?
What I do is I take them through a health check, and I try and work out where are they right now and where should they be. Now, that's a fairly traditional consulting model.
Sure.
It's something that I think we all roll out as consultants quite a bit. I think I try and work out how clean is their data, and I'll listen to their problems, really listen. So they'll say something like, this report's taken a long time to run. And then I'll say, okay, so tell me about that. Let's unpack that a bit. And then the problems appear. Well, it takes too long because the data source isn't good. And sometimes it's a small example could be they are running a report with so many filters on it, it's not running, or the data itself, there's so much of it. I had one customer say to me, Jennifer, I really want a report. I want to be able to print it, and it has to have 165 columns on this report, and I want data for the last 5 years. And this is a serious request. And I have to say, let's take a little reality check on that, will we? How's that report going to look? Because if you print it out, you'd have to paste it on the wall in order to read it. What is it you're trying to do? And I think in business intelligence, we can forget to put the business back into business intelligence. We forget that people don't always ask for what they want, and they don't always know what they want, and they certainly don't know what they need. So we're trying to find a common ground between the technology and the business. And I think that problem is particularly exacerbated with AI as well. I think there's a difference between how people see artificial intelligence and what the technology offers often. So I don't think we are there yet in the industry to achieving that, but I think we are more achieving an applied, a much narrower artificial intelligence. And actually the really cool thing is we actually carry a bit of that in our pockets with us every day on our smartphones, where we can just say a command into the phone, and the phone will do something. It will give you directions, it will tell you the time, tell you the next thing that appears on your agenda. And we saw examples of that this morning in the Build keynote. And I think organisations need to think about focusing on what the success criteria are for artificial intelligence. What does the narrow artificial intelligence look like for them? And I think that's where the business value really comes in.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with Andrew Ng's rule of thumb that if a product manager or someone like that can recognize a problem and solve it in 1 second, like is there a cat in this photo, then those 1 second problems are really teed up for today's artificial intelligence. Have you found something like that, or maybe your own heuristic to be true in the projects you've taken on?
I tend to try and automate as much as possible, but I do try and make sure that the organisation is set up for success. I'm not looking to replace jobs with technology. What I am trying to do is to make people's lives and jobs easier and automating that way. Say, for example, you've got an issue with getting lots of forms and paper and they are all handwritten. Now, it's going to take a human a lot of time to read some of the handwriting. If you've ever seen my handwriting, it would probably take you more time than anyone else. I spend lots of time typing. I never write anymore. So I think people's handwriting isn't always very good. I know certainly mine is not. But for a human to do that, sometimes they can do the easy stuff and it doesn't take much time. But the harder handwriting, the more difficult, harder to read handwriting, like mine, for example, is going to take longer. So what a piece of narrow artificial intelligence could do there is automate the nice, tidy handwriting. And then an individual could come along and they could check the nice, tidy handwriting, see how well the AI has done. And then they could start to really focus on the harder stuff. And that's where the value comes in. I don't think you take the human out of it. And that's the problems that I like to try and solve. Make things easier and better.
There's certainly a workflow to be set up in a scenario like that. There has to be that first pass of machine learning, so that has to be in your infrastructure somewhere. Then some sort of, presumably, a queue of review to go in. Maybe we, sample that so we have some sort of measurement of how many bad things are getting through. There's a lot of choices to be made. Can you talk about how people in industry are approaching that collection of issues and getting machine learning and systems like that into production?
I think at the moment they are struggling with the framework. So I was very glad to see Microsoft doing the ML ops. I think that will really help to educate the industry of the process. I think they don't always understand it or they can't articulate it very well. I think the second problem is they don't always see how it fits into their support. How can we look after this when it's gone live? And obviously they need to be able to do that, or they'll never derive business value from it. They might also be embarrassed. And what I find is when I speak to most people in the industry, they don't want to appear stupid or embarrassed, and that's very human. And I think particularly when I speak to executives, they definitely don't want to appear stupid or embarrassed in front of their team. So everything has to be right. So I think sometimes people find it hard to get started because they're worried about the end goal. My advice would be to start with the end in mind. What is it you're trying to do? And then lead up to that point. So I do see confusion. I also think it's really important to think about the quality of data that people have. I still see bad data everywhere. I see missing data. I see data that's incomplete. And people are collecting things they don't always need or use. I think as an industry, it's great that we are talking about AI and ML, all these fantastic technologies, but we still need to go back and think about the basics.
Many people will be hearing the term ML ops for the first time.
Yes.
Naturally, a lot of ears will associate that with DevOps, so we have a good hint about what exactly it is, but what are some of the compare and contrast points that we need a unique term for ML ops? And I guess I should also ask, what is ML ops?
Yes. Now, I see ML ops as a process for taking people to production, taking their ML for live, if you like, so that they can derive real business value from it. An example might be some solutions that I've been working on. Email management. How do you manage email? Everyone is email. Probably too much of it. I know I certainly have too much of it. And then what happens is the program can read the inbound email and then decide what it's going to do with that email. So if you're a customer service department, having automated email management is really useful. It can answer the easy and passes the hard things to people who are qualified to do that. So when we look at those kind of systems, how do you know your system's ready? Because it's got your email, your customer service in its hand. And if it gets it wrong, the customer's going to get a bad response. They're already cross, perhaps. You don't want to make them more cross by giving them a really wrong copy and paste type of answer.
Yeah.
So in those kind of scenarios, you build your model of how you see the patterns in those emails appearing. At some point, the model has to go live. And the ML ops really comes in where you take that model, put it into production, and then it is running with live data, running live with like any other system would. I think the difference between ML ops and more normal DevOps is the inclusion of a model in there. And it's not just about the technology, but I think it's all about that comfort factor as well. You know, how can we be sure that this isn't going to embarrass the organisation in some way?
I could see a potential tension in an organization between, let's say, the VP of customer service and the VP of data science. On one hand, the data scientists have built some great models and they're doing all this wonderful work, but the customer service representative, let's just assume for the moment it's a very concierge-oriented organization, they might have a fear of doing any automation because one bad response could cost one account, which could be, a corporate account worth thousands of dollars a year or more. How do most organizations navigate those sorts of political issues?
I think it's about the cost benefit, really. You wouldn't perhaps do business to business through automated email management, but you might do business to normal consumers, where the consumers are emailing to say things like, my loyalty card points haven't been added to your system yet, can you please take care of it? So the cash value is probably very small, but the amount of time the organisation takes to respond to that email, send it, is probably quite high because it's quite intensive. So I think it's about finding a really good business case for what it is you're trying to do, and I think that's really important with any system actually. But with AI, you are thinking about what is that business case and what is the result. An example of good customer success using AI might be using something like a chatbot, which is on your website. It's already limited in what it can do. But customers expect it to be limited in what it can do, actually. I don't think they're expecting it to tell you something like the meaning of life or anything like that. But I think customers' expectations are already managed by the fact they're using a chatbot anyway. But what they are expecting is if the chatbots can't answer the quick questions, that they are put through to somebody who really can answer those questions. So it's easing some of the productivity issues that you might see. And often when people look at a website, and especially if the website has got a lot of content on it, they don't want to navigate through lots of things. They just want to type something in, tell me your phone number, and they just want something back. And maybe the concierge chatbot then says, would you like us to call you? What's your number? Give us your details. Fill in this form. And off it goes into a CRM process somewhere. And it's just a nice touch.
Yeah, definitely. In my experience, most models are kind of like a software deployment. You kind of compute your binary, you put it out there. Some minority of cases, you'll do real-time updates or maybe batch update that model nightly, things like that. But once you have the model and you want to put it out there, there's a lot of options we've got. You can make a REST API, maybe use a serverless approach, or my SQL Server will put it directly in the database. Do you see any trends or patterns in the organizations you've worked with and how they actually get their models out there and what the underlying technologies are?
I'm seeing more and more requests for customers to use serverless technology. I spoke to a university recently and they're very interested in container technology. And I was curious why. And I thought maybe it's because they knew big thing. But then they said, well, because they're doing research, they can give the container with the research paper and have someone else validate their results.
Oh, that's a great idea.
It's a fantastic idea, because when you think about the academic research process, it has to go through a number of validation steps before it gets published, as you expect in academia. But it's great to think about they could actually hand out the container as well with all the code, the data, and say, you can replicate that and question it and tear it apart to make sure their results are correct. I think when I speak to business people, they don't always care about the technology. So if I talk about REST APIs, you can see, the light dying in their eyes because they just want it to work. They don't really care about the acronyms. So I think then I start to deal with the technologists. You get the laggards who are not comfortable. They're out of their comfort zone and they don't really want to do this. But then I see the early adopters, the ones that really want to grab this with both hands. And they do understand that this is basically for them a CV building exercise. They're building their curriculum vitae on this project. I don't care about the motivation personally. I just want the project to be a success. And I'm happy if they are happy, because happy colleagues deliver better results. And I think a lot to do is with people and process as well.
I'm wondering if you could share any experiences specifically with Azure Machine Learning and how that tool differentiates from other options.
Yes, I've implemented that for customers, and I've put that recommendation in to use it with other customers who've then gone on to use things like Microsoft Machine Learning Server, but using R and Python. I see them as having quite different audiences. So Azure Machine Learning is very much for people who just want to get started. They want to put the toe in the water. They want implementation, which does not have much risk. And they obviously have never done any coding in R or Python. They don't want to start coding in R and Python. They just want stuff to happen, drag and drop. Just give me my model. Let's productionize. Off they go. And that's fine. But what I find is I then run into the second group of people who say, we actually do want to learn this coding now. We've seen what that can do, and we think that we can actually handle some exceptions differently than the model does. We want to unpick it, and we really want to understand it. It's not that they're losing faith in AI, it's just they want to take it a step further, and they want to do much more complex business cases for that. And I think it's good that Microsoft has the opportunity to do both things. Get you started, and get you started and successful quickly. I think in the second case, I've seen people prefer to use machine learning on a virtual machine, and the reason for that is the sensitivity of the data. They may not be comfortable with putting data in the cloud completely, but using something like SQL Server and using its machine learning components is a comfort zone for them. I think also the second option is good for the technologists who are the laggards. They may have DBA skill sets, they may be good database administrators, and I'm taking them from a point of comfort to a point where they are learning new things. And I'm not saying to them that I'm taking their toys away from them by moving things to the cloud. What I do say is very strongly is I'm expanding your skill set in a way that will really make sure you're relevant. You can be king of both castles, so why don't you join me in this journey? And so far that helps move the laggards along.
For the no coding concept, this is one I might be a laggard on. I have a little bit of a struggle coming around to accepting that that's a possibility. Not that the technology interface isn't there, but that there are data sets that are clean enough and naturally good enough that a solution like that is possible. What have you found in working with people to develop tools like that?
I find that those people tend to be much more business focused. So I ran a team recently who wanted to move to data science. Their chief technical officer was extremely visionary, and he said, I've just got the people that I've got. One's a historian, one is an English literature degree, the other one was a former nurse. So these people maybe had a bit of background in statistics, but not very much. And he said, so we're not hiring new people, I have no budget, but I want to give these people data science skills. Because I keep being told about how anyone can do data science. Make it happen. And you know what? It was one of the most fun projects I have delivered. Because what I realised was these people already had great detective skills. When you do a history degree, you may not be technical, but you know about validating data, you know about research. You have been through that process in your whole undergraduate degree of evaluating data. The data just happens to be historical. Same with English literature. You have to question and criticise everything. It may not make you a coder, but it does make you confident about your results when you see them right, and it does mean you can communicate and articulate what the model is doing because you've thought about it, you've got the results, and having that background in literature means you can really explain these difficult concepts to the CTO who needs to sign off these systems. So actually there's enormous value in people from different backgrounds coming at data and being facilitated to do that by the fact that they can't code. Actually, when I look at that project, I think it was actually the best thing that they couldn't code. The fact that they just really went at it. They were liberated by not having to learn R and Python. But I spoke to them recently. It was a project I delivered some time ago. But my customers are always my customers, even if the project's finished. And one of them told me very proudly that they had passed their certification in R.
All right.
So I thought that was fantastic, moving through all those skill sets. And I'm sure they're going to do even more wonderful things. So I'm very proud of them, actually. I think in this industry at the moment it's so exciting. I think honestly we could talk all day.
Absolutely. Well, maybe we should wrap up for today then. Where can people follow you online?
If you look for me on Twitter, Jen Stirrup. I'm also on LinkedIn and I accept LinkedIn connections. And I blog over at jenstirrup.com.
Great. I'll have links to stuff like that in the show notes. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me.
Well, thank you for having me today. It's been lovely to speak with you.